Okay, you guys, I am back to be your big sister, but today we are going to be talking about C-sections. I have had two, one emergency and one scheduled. My emergency was the most traumatic thing I've ever been through, and my scheduled was the most healing thing I've ever been through. I'm going to share my experience with both and what the major differences were to show you that you do not need to be afraid of being a C-section mama. Most of you know that I gave birth at 27 weeks pregnant because I got in a severe car accident where my placenta actually abrupted, which then led to an emergency C-section, so I was under general anesthesia. The first memory I have of waking up and really realizing that I had a C-section was when they had to take the bandage off of me, and when I looked down, I was literally stapled from hip to hip. I was fortunate enough that they actually cut me horizontal. You can either be cut horizontally during a C-section or vertically, and typically in the case of an emergency or something as severe as mine was, they would have cut me vertically in order to get the baby out faster and to have more room. But for me, that wasn't the case, and I am extremely grateful for that. However, my scar looked massive to me. It looked so big and it had staples. It literally looked like I was stapled from hip to hip. I immediately started crying and honestly having an anxiety attack. I was of course suffering from other traumas, like the fact I had just given birth to a premature baby. However, when you're not expecting something so severe to happen to your body and such a big change, it can be really shell-shocking. However, I was really fortunate to have such a supportive husband. My husband and my mom were actually the ones in the room with me when I saw it for the first time. And when I started crying, they both were so kind, so complimenting, and reassured me that I was beautiful and that it was going to heal beautiful and that it represented my son. What is so fortunate is that the staples actually made my scar look so much bigger than it actually was. So over time, as it started healing, my scar got smaller and it also got lighter and lighter. It was a very dark red and like a purple when I first saw it, and now it's faded to be a completely white scar. It is literally pencil thin and it's only about this long. It's also extremely low. It actually sits below a bikini line, so you can't even see it when I'm in a swimsuit. Another thing that women will refer to when they have a C-section that might scare other women who haven't had one yet is the C-section shelf. That is referring to the part of your belly that sits right above your scar, because your scar can act as like an indent in your body, which leaves you just looking a little bit puffy right above your scar. Now, I won't lie, my stomach is not perfectly flat. I do have just that tiny bit of a shelf above it. However, it does go down significantly over the first 6 to 8 months postpartum. I promise that nobody can see it through your clothes. Nobody can see it when you're in a swimsuit, and it's really not even noticeable when you're naked. It really will go down significantly, I promise. In terms of the actual healing of my C-section, I was recovering from a car accident, so that is something that is a little bit more unique to me, but I was only on painkiller for 7 days, and then it was really uphill from there. I did wear a belly band, which was extremely helpful. It doesn't hold your belly in, it actually holds your belly up, so I highly recommend getting one at the hospital or on like Amazon if you know you're gonna have a C-section. Wear it when you're walking around, and it's gonna take so much pressure off of your scar. Now let's talk about my scheduled C-section. I had to have another C-section with my second baby because of completely different reasons. I also had a very traumatic pregnancy my second time around, but that's a different story. But when I knew that I was going to have another C-section, I was actually really happy because I had such a positive healing experience with my first, and I knew they were going to go through the exact same scar. So I was really lucky. I already had a scar. I figured, why not go through that again and get me another baby? When I went into the hospital, they actually just hooked me up to an IV, so obviously I felt like a tiny little poke. Then they had me wheeled into the operating room where they gave me a spinal block. I think this is what I was the most afraid for because I was under general anesthesia with my emergency C-section, and I stayed awake for my scheduled C-section. So basically, a spinal block is very similar to an epidural. So I was definitely afraid of that little poke, but I felt absolutely nothing. I couldn't even believe when they told me that they were done because I thought it hadn't even happened yet. So when I say I felt nothing, I actually mean it. Then my body got like really high, not like a head high, but a body high. My legs felt like they were floating. It was like the coolest feeling ever. Then they laid me down because I was sitting on the table at that point. Hunter came and sat at the head of the bed, and then they put up a curtain so that I couldn't actually see them operating. And then they started performing the C-section. It took about 30 minutes, and I had a lot of people tell me you're going to feel a little bit of tugging, a little bit of pulling, but it's not painful. I personally felt absolutely nothing. I'm talking like zero. Nothing at all. I literally felt how I feel right now when I was on that table delivering my daughter. The doctor even told me right when they got ready to pull her from my belly that I was gonna feel a little bit of pulling to kind of like brace myself, like we're getting ready to pull her, and I felt absolutely nothing. And then I heard her beautiful little cry fill that room, and it was the most healing experience I've ever had in my entire life. I am so grateful for both of my C-sections. My second one healed just as well as my first. My scar is still tiny, pencil thin, the color white. My C-section shelf went down just the same as it did the first time, and I am so grateful to be a C-section mama.